As a salesperson, listening is one of the keys to success. And I'll tell you now, until you master this art, you'll remain no more than a peddler in your marketplace. So many people leave many sales opportunity on the table because instead of listening to what's been said to them, they're listening to what they're going to say themselves. In this episode, we're going to look at making listening your greatest weapon and give you 5 top tips on this important subject. So sit back and listen up. Lack of listening skills is one of the greatest pitfalls for a salesperson. People are so intent on getting their message or proposition across that they don't stop. Even if they do ask questions, they don't always listen to the answers. So here's number 1 of our 5 top tips. Use the 80-20 rule. You should be listening 80% of the time to a customer, which means they're talking 80% of the time. The key to this is questioning techniques, which we've already covered. But also, it's about biting your tongue and letting the other person finish what they've got to say. Don't interrupt, let them talk. Top tip number 2, use what we call listening affirmations. These are things like aha or expressions like I see or oh yeah. These subtle little words and noises give a message to the speaker that you're actually interested in what they've got to say, which is key to building rapport. And this becomes significantly more important if you conduct business over the phone. The number of times I've had phone conversations where I've had to ask people if they're still there. But the thing is, they might just be happily listening away. But the question that often crosses my mind in these situations is, are they doing something else and not listening? Which brings us to top tip number 3, avoid distractions. It's easy with today's forms of communication like email and texting to get distracted when somebody's talking to you. An email comes in, you just glance at it to see what it's about, and before you know it, you're reading it and not listening. I've done this, and I know you have. It might also be somebody sticking a note under your nose or putting a post-it on your PC monitor for when you've finished your call. But the temptation is to read it now. Don't. You know when others are doing this to you. You can tell. And if you get caught out doing it, all rapport is lost. Top tip number 4, key wording. When listening, I've said don't interrupt, but the customer may come out with a number of key points that you want to come back to and get more detail on. So the trick is to not interrupt, but make a note of a key word that will remind you to come back to a particular point. There are 3 benefits to this process. Firstly, the physical act of taking notes demonstrates to a customer you are actually listening. Secondly, when you come back to the point and ask a supplementary question about it, you prove to the customer that you've been listening to what they have to say and that you're genuinely interested. And thirdly, using key words instead of taking copious notes means you can continue to listen. If you write too much, you can't listen at the same time and you'll start to miss things. Now, the last and final top tip, number 5, is to use the technique of summarizing and paraphrasing. This is simply reciting back to the customer, at the appropriate time, a summary of the key points of the conversation so far. This obviously shows you've been listening, but has the added benefit to you of making sure you fully understand the situation and that you've captured any of the specific details correctly. And it also enables you to control the conversation with regards to where it goes next. So, let's remind ourselves of these 5 trade secrets for successful listening. 1, enforce the 80-20 rule. 2, use listening affirmations. 3, avoid distractions. 4, capture key words. And 5, summarize and paraphrase. These simple techniques are simple, but because of this, people often overlook their power. Make them your greatest weapon, and these techniques alone, which are often referred to as active listening techniques, will transform your sales relationships with clients. Now, we've had quite a bit of theory over the last couple of episodes, and a couple of exercises from Mike, so let me finish by giving you an exercise. During your next customer conversation, I want you to apply these techniques. But as far as an action goes, that's not very smart. So what I want you to do is this. Set yourself the goal of using the summarizing technique at least 2 times. That means I want you, at the appropriate time, to verbally summarize with the customer your conversation to that point, and get verbal confirmation back that you have understood things correctly. Then you can pick up on something within your summary as a keyword and continue a conversation about that specific point. Or if it's at the end of the conversation, use your summary to position your product or service, or maybe recommend some next steps, whatever's appropriate. So, this episode actually takes us to the end of requirements. And as far as your sales cycle goes, you should now be building great rapport with your customers, identifying sales opportunities, and qualifying whether they should be pursued further or not at this time. Our next series is called Implications, and it's this stage that typically takes a customer from a prospect to a buyer. So we hope you've got great value from the engagement series, and we'll start applying the learning immediately, and then join Mike and I again soon to take your selling to the next level. Until then, I, Brian Conway, wish you all the best. Goodbye.